he stopped a sword strike with his bare hands, dodged energy blasts like it was a joke, and lifted his own assassin by the neck with just one hand. But you know what's the craziest part about all this? He shouldn't have any power at all. Kim Tae-ju was considered the trash of society, a man to reject, condemned to a slow and painful death, betrayed and hunted like an animal in the woods. He was mercilessly struck down and thrown off a cliff. That was supposed to be the end of him. Has just awakened to destroy the empire that betrayed him. In the void of his subconscious, he met a monster from the past, the absolute poison demon, the ancient ruler of martial arts. Two souls intertwined across time, transferring centuries of forbidden power to a dying boy. To survive, he had to devour pure poison. He restructured his veins, broke his chains, and was reborn as a relentless nightmare. The loser the whole world stepped on and tried to kill, has just awakened to destroy the empire that betrayed him. The story begins in the year 2326 on Mount Sirak, located in the Salmon Empire. We then see soldiers shouting to catch someone, saying that if the fugitive escapes, they are all done for. Running through the forest, the young man desperately wonders what he could have done wrong. Completely exhausted, he can't understand why everyone is trying to end his life. Suddenly, one of the pursuers shouts his name, which is Kim Tae-ju, and tells him to stop right there. But an intense light appears out of nowhere, blinding the young man and making it impossible for him to see. At that moment, the protagonist feels a sharp pain in his chest and realizes his heart has failed. With no strength left to continue, Second Lieutenant Kim Tae-ju collapses to his knees on the forest floor. One of the men approaches and scoffs, asking if he thought he could run away with having another attack. Then a group of soldiers appears, and the leader says Tae-ju is just a dying mana rejector. Surrounded on the edge of a cliff, the platoon leader asks if the chase is finally over. The cornered young man yells, wanting to know why they are doing this and what he did to deserve it. The officer just laughs and says that a rejector is trash who should have been gone a long time ago. He continues, saying the boy only survived to annoy Her Excellency, leaving Ju confused. With his hand on his belt, the protagonist questions if he is referring to a woman named Honda Mitsui. The leader gets angry and warns that even though she is a stepmother, she is a superior and deserves respect. Without any more delay, the man draws his sword and moves in to put an end to the protagonist's life. Tae-ju is completely frozen in fear, watching the attack come right at him. With a cold stare, Officer Jang simply tells the boy to perish once and for all. Then a strike hits Kim Tae-ju head-on, sending him flying off the cliff. As the young man falls, the leader reveals that the Paju property will be inherited by Mitsu's two sons. Finally, he wishes the young man a good journey to the afterlife as his body plummets. Then the scene changes completely to 300 years in the past, in the year 2026. On that day, the sun was covered by an eclipse that ushered in a completely new era. Lights began to fall from the sky, and an unknown energy called mana descended upon the entire Earth. As a result, 90% of the entire population of Earth was simply wiped out. With this, the planet's climate changed, cities crumbled, and human civilization collapsed. 300 years later, in 2326, the survivors adapted to mana. However, magical beasts and poisonous plants emerged because of mana, starting a new war. With this war, a new social hierarchy was created, with mana rejectors being the lowest class. Protagonist's father is Brigadier General Kim Eung-bang, a master class awakened the highest level. And this is his eldest son, Kim Tae-ju, a mana rejector who is slowly passing away from its poison. Just then, a mysterious voice appears, saying it strived to become immortal, but this is not the celestial realm. The entity thinks the place looks like its home, but mixed with something bizarre, and asks where they are. An old man then appears, asking if the young man knows where they are and what is happening. At that moment, Kim Tae-ju opens his eyes and realizes he is not gone yet as he had thought. In front of him, floating in the void, is an old man with white hair and very ancient clothes. He then uses his power to pull the boy closer and tells him to stand up and show his face. When their faces are side by side, a great surprise occurs for both of them. It is then revealed that this is the absolute poison demon, Tang Gun, a leader of the Sichuan Tang clan. He was the man who faced the celestial demon when it threatened to consume the entire world. Using his techniques, he was able to dissolve the celestial demon into a pool of toxic sludge. With this victory, he became the absolute ruler of Miram and possesses the same soul as Kim Tae-ju. In his final years, he meditated to achieve ethereal ascension and become an immortal. And somehow, during this process, their souls ended up intertwining with each other. The moment they recognized each other, Tang Gun's memories began to flow into the protagonist. The young man is completely shocked by the new memories and asks if Tang Gun is him. The old master then confirms that those were his memories, that they now belong to the boy. He explains that Tae-ju is his self from Earth and that they share the same soul and the same potential. But even so, the young man was looked down on his whole life due to the constraints of being a rejecter. The old man says that now he understands everything, and that they are in a mental realm shared by both of them. Since they are the same person, the master offers all his experience and vast knowledge. The old man then closes his eyes and tells the boy to train with everything he has just received. He promises that if the protagonist works hard, he too will become the absolute ruler of his world. With that, a great light explodes and all the power and knowledge are transferred to Kim Tae-ju. Back in the real world, the young man is on the ground but still alive, and the master speaks in his mind. Finally, he wishes Kim Tae-ju good luck and tells him to use all this power as he sees fit. The young man then wakes up dazed and calls out Tang Gunnik's name, not quite understanding what happened. He realizes it wasn't a dream and that all of the master's knowledge is still in his head. Lying on the ground and badly hurt, the protagonist knows he needs to do something if he wants to survive. He needs to learn the technique that made Tang Gunnik a master, a martial art that grows stronger with poison. Fortunately for the young man, there are many poisonous herbs everywhere, and he begins to gather them. With the plants in his hand, he feels the poison start to take effect on his already weakened body. But to survive, the young man knows he must eat the herbs, so he puts them in his mouth without hesitation. He needs to convert the poison into internal energy and form a poison essence inside his danchan. If he can do this, he can restructure his body and break the chains of being a rejecter. With a determined look, he vows to survive and pay everyone back, starting with Jang and Dong. Later that night, the soldiers receive orders to confirm the young man's body before they leave. They start searching the forest with flashlights but can't find the body anywhere. Impatient, the platoon leader complains about the delay until one of the men shouts that he found Kim Tae-ju. When they arrive, they are surprised to see the young man sitting up and alive, and they wonder how it's possible. One of the soldiers notices that the protagonist looks different, and the officer asks why he gets that feeling. Jang and Dong perceives a mana reaction and understands that he is using poison energy, not mana. Furious, he shouts, asking how a mana rejector could do that, and orders his men to eliminate him. One of the soldiers charges forward quickly, sword in hand, to carry out his superior's orders. But the protagonist remains calm with his eyes closed, as if the attack were nothing to him. The soldier continues his advance, and his sword is about to hit the target, dead on. At that moment, Kim Tae-ju opens his eyes and faces the oncoming attack without any fear. To everyone's surprise, the young man simply stops the sword blade using only his hand. The soldiers are completely shocked and speechless as they watch the scene unfold before them. The protagonist looks at his hand, impressed with his new internal energy flowing through his body. With a smile on his face, he clenches his fist, feeling the power he has just awakened within himself. Now, with this new strength, he knows he can finally get revenge on everyone who betrayed him. Tae-ju then stands up and faces his former comrades, saying it's good to see them again. Jang and Dong, suspicious, asks where this confidence comes from, and if he has awakened somehow. The young man just smiles and repeats the word awakened, in a very mocking and confident way. We then see an explanation that the awakened are divided into ranks and receive a tattoo on their face. Jang and Dong is a novice, which is equivalent to a third-class warrior in martial arts. The platoon leader asks if he's finished with his last words and calls him an insolent bastard. But Kim Tae-ju prepares for combat and warns that he will return everything they did to him. One of the soldiers scoffs, asking if the young man hit his head when he fell off the cliff earlier. Then the leader yells for them to attack all at once and vows that this time he'll make sure he's gone for good. Even though it's his first fight in this body, the young man feels strangely calm for the situation. With the old master's spirit behind him, he understands that the calm comes from Tang Gunnik's memories. Even if mana rejects him, he knows that the path of the poison demon still lives within him. With a look full of confidence, the protagonist prepares to fight because he knows he can win. Using the poison blade art, he launches a single strike with poison-filled coins. The blades fly at high speed toward the soldiers, who were not expecting this attack. One of the men is hit head-on, and the poison begins to spread rapidly through his body. Then the protagonist uses a phantom movement to move among the enemies like a blur. Concentrating poisonous energy in his hand, he prepares his next attack with immense power. With the blood-poisoned palm, he strikes one of the soldiers, hitting his chest with full force. A blast of green energy is fired, sending the man flying with a single blow. One of the survivors panics and desperately screams for his commander, seeking help. Seeing he has no chance, he draws an energy weapon and shouts for the protagonist to perish. He carefully aims at the young man and prepares to fire without a second thought. But the shot is blocked by a barrier of poisonous energy that protects the young man from the attack. Effortlessly, he dodges the attack, showing that normal weapons no longer work against him. With a look of contempt, the boy simply says the soldier was too slow to hit him. Lying on the ground, the platoon leader asks what the protagonist did to him, as he feels very weak. The young man coldly explains that even the awakened have no chance against the poison. The officer is shocked and doesn't understand how he can use an ability without a tattoo on his face. Tae-ju laughs at the idea of it being an ability and asks how it feels to be on the other side now. He continues to taunt him, asking if the feeling of being poisoned isn't full and dirty. Desperate and feeling the pain, Jang-in, Dong begs Lieutenant Kim to spare him and forgive him. But without showing any mercy, the young man grabs the neck of the man who betrayed him without hesitation. The officer screams in pain as the poison intensifies and the young man's power grows stronger and stronger. He lifts the man into the air with just one hand and prepares to deliver the final blow. With his last bit of strength, the leader tries to threaten the boy, asking if he knows who supports him. He tries to say Mitsu's name, but the protagonist tightens his grip on his neck, silencing him. With an icy glare, the young man prepares to end the life of the man who betrayed him without mercy. He stands amidst the bodies of the soldiers, his hand glowing with poisonous energy. With a slight smirk, he finally gets his revenge against them. Then he says not to worry because he has no intention of going down quietly. The scene then shifts to the Salmon Empire, a nation formed by the union of Korea, China, and Japan. Taeja's hometown Paju is part of this empire but is a small and barren city. In an office, a man asks if the protagonist was discharged and another confirms the rumor. The young man's father then asks about the assassination attempt and what exactly happened. With that, the subordinate reveals that he barely survived and is now missing and discharged. Furthermore, it was reported that Jang and his group were attacked by monsters while fleeing. The general asks why they would do that and discovers that Japanese officials ordered the attack. The man becomes furious and suspects the Japanese affiliation behind everything that happened. Tired, he asks if his wife Hana Mitsui was responsible and seems to already know the answer. She is the daughter of a powerful Japanese family and the mother of Taeja's half-brothers, Taepyeong and Taechian. To pass the Paju lands to her sons, she always hoped the man rejecter would pass away. The boy's father wonders if she got tired of waiting and therefore asked her father-in-law to eliminate him. He thinks she should have waited, as the matter is serious and they need the in-law's support. Thinking about the situation, the general decides there is no other choice but to cover up the whole affair. He then orders his subordinate to take care of everything and dismisses him from the office without further delay. The man leaves and closes the door, leaving the young man's father alone with his thoughts. The general thinks that his son is a rejecter and that it was already a miracle he lived to be 29. He knows Mitsui crossed the line but prefers to ignore it for the sake of his other two sons. Finally, he decides not to look for Tae-ju and wishes for him to live the rest of his life freely. Then the scene shifts to the Jurisan monster border zone in the territory of the Salmon Empire. There we see the protagonist with a new look, admiring the view of the city of Gurai from a distance. A man approaches and asks if this is Kim's first time seeing the city, and he confirms it. The man comments that the young man must not know the city very well, and the boy agrees with him. He explains that Gurai was a small town 300 years ago in the former Republic of Korea. But everything changed when it was absorbed by the empire, and the high concentration of monsters needed to be contained. For that reason, the emperor made it a free city and a key base to attract people to the area. With restrictions lifted, the Awakened arrived in droves, and monster hunting prospered greatly. That's how Gurai became a wealthy city, and the protagonist just wanted him to get to the point. But the man also warns that there are many dangerous criminals, and Tae-ju thanks him for the advice. The young man thinks that although he talks a lot, he is a good person who cares about others. Then we see a quick flashback from a while ago, showing what happened to the protagonist. After surviving the assassination attempt in the army, he knew he couldn't go back home. He then cut all ties and looked for a place where he could grow and get stronger. That's how the young man found the free city of Gurai and joined a group of hunters. Since imperial authority is weak there, it would be difficult for his family to track him down. With many poisonous monsters and toxic herbs, the place was ideal for training his martial arts. The phrase martial arts still sounded strange as he received a fatal gift before his passing. The absolute poison demon from the Mirror world, who shared the same soul as him, appeared. He wonders if, in the end, Hana Mitsui, the woman who tried to eliminate him, did him a favor. With no strength or money, the young man is growing by working as a porter in Jurisan for now. The group's leader then asks the young man who he thinks is the strongest in their group. Tae-ju looks at two women in front, and the man points to the swordswoman Lee Han-il. The young man notices that her rank is one level above Jang and Dong, which is quite impressive. But he notices something strange in the girl's mana flow and can't understand what's wrong. Suddenly, the professional faints and a giant mosquito appears, causing everyone to panic. The protagonist is confused by everyone's reaction and wonders if it's just a mosquito. Just then, a mage from the group tells everyone to back away and that she will take care of the giant creature. With a staff in hand, she prepares to cast a powerful spell against the monster. She then conjures a large fireball and launches it directly at the mosquito. The spell explodes in a huge ball of fire and apparently defeats the monster successfully. Not understanding the panic, Tae-ju asks why everyone was so scared of a mosquito. In severe cases, the bite makes people faint, and many groups have been wiped out because of it. The leader's description matches a poison from Tangun's memories, making the young man curious. He then decides to take the chance and check the girl's condition with his poison art. The young man asks if she's okay, and upon touching her, he notices something strange about her energy. At that moment, one of the men in the group complains that this shouldn't even be a mosquito zone. One of the hunters just retreating since they don't have anti-insect gear, and Pro Lee is already down. Suddenly, a noise in the tall grass catches everyone's attention and puts the group on alert. The team leader tenses up and realizes something is approaching them in the forest. He then shouts for everyone to prepare for battle, and the group immediately draws their weapons. Then a long-tailed sack rabbit emerges from the grass, the lowest monster on the food chain. The group's mage laughs at the situation, and the other hunters seem relieved by the false alarm. With a smile on his face, the leader tells everyone to relax as they will retreat for now. But before they could leave, he lets out a grunt of pain, and his expression changes completely. The mage turns around, startled to see a giant shadow suddenly appearing right behind her. Just then, a huge hand grabs the leader and another member, lifting them off the ground with ease. Out of nowhere, a group of orcs appears, and one of them screams in despair at the sight of the monsters. The creatures charge forward with everything they've got, and the group of hunters has nowhere to run from the ambush. The mage then decides to stay behind and shouts for them to take the wounded and get out of there now. The head porter calls for Kim, who is tending to the fainted girl on the ground. but the protagonist tells him to go on ahead and says he will stay to help in the fight. The leader says the fight isn't theirs, but Tae-ju insists he needs to help because there are too many enemies. He hands a girl to the leader and asks him to take care of her, even though the man thinks it's useless. With a serious look, the young man says there's no time and that he'll just provide support from a distance. The leader agrees and leaves with the girl on his shoulders, while Tae-ju assures him he'll be fine. Watching the battle, he notices that the orcs' movements are strangely coordinated. With a fire spear, the mage manages to take down one of the creatures and shouts for it to perish. Suddenly, she shouts for them to be careful as one of the orcs is heading toward the porters. The mage then turns quickly and runs to stop the monster from reaching the fleeing group. She uses a wall of fire to block the creature's path and protect her companions. Near the fire, the protagonist covers his face to protect himself from the intense heat of her magic. With wide eyes, he looks up and desperately shouts for the mage to get down. An orc appears right behind her, ready to strike, and the woman doesn't understand what's happening. The scene then shifts to a completely different place called the Immortal Realm. It's a paradise-like place with floating islands and ancient buildings scattered everywhere. Tangunik thinks that a month has already passed and that none of this would have been possible without meeting Tae-ju. The knowledge of a world called Earth, which he gained through the soul sharing, was the key. This gave the old master a new enlightenment and a new perspective on everything he knew. And so, he finally achieved the ascension to immortality that he had so desired in his life. But he clenches his fist in anger, thinking that he should have known things wouldn't be so easy. The Immortal Realm was actually a prison to lock up scoundrels like the other immortals there. He starts laughing wildly, thinking that all the other immortals living there are crazy. Sect founders and legendary masters, all fighting like animals with no purpose. The thought that he wasted all those years to end up in a place like that irritates him. But he sees the bright side as the connection with Tae-ju led him to this unexpected outcome. Through the connection, the old master asks how the protagonist is doing in his world. He hopes the young man finds happiness with his power, as he lived a life of weakness. To surpass the masters, he needs to reach the 9th star of the poison spirit art. He says goodbye and mentions that if fate allows, they may see each other again in the future. Back in his body, the old man gets annoyed with the others' mess and knows he needs to train. One of the immortals provokes him and challenges him to a fight, belittling his dagger technique. But the master doesn't take insults, lying down and shouts that he will finish that crazy swordsman. Back in the fight, the protagonist clicks his tongue, showing his total impatience with the orcs. He throws one of his coins to deflect the monster's attack and save the mage from danger. The woman is hit by the young man and falls to the ground, not understanding what just happened. With a serious look, he says he will show them the hidden weapon technique he just learned. Using the flying dagger technique, he throws several coins at once against the monsters. The projectiles fly at high speed and hit all the orcs at the same time with precision. The coins fall from the sky like a shower of blades, hitting the enemies without giving them a chance to defend. The protagonist then lands stylishly, and the coins fall to the ground after the attack. He didn't expect to finish them all in one blow, but is satisfied with the outcome of the fight. He approaches the unconscious mage and wonders what to do, as he knocked her out by accident. He knows that nothing good will come from exposing his power, and that the news could reach his father. Therefore, the young man decides to leave quickly before anyone else shows up to see the scene. He reflects that a month ago he was a mana rejecter and that meeting Gun changed his life. He then grabs his bag and wonders if he should clean up the mess before it's too late. He complains that hidden weapon techniques are terrible for hiding evidence and that it's expensive. The young man knows he needs to get stronger to automatically retrieve the coins, starting from the 7th star. Tae-ju looks for the last lost coin and is sure he threw it in a certain direction. He then finds the coin stuck in a tree and takes it back to store with the others. When he turns around, the protagonist comes face to face with the same mosquito from before, and the insect is gone. He picks up the creature with his energy and analyzes it closely to understand what's happening. The young man notices that this is not the habitat of the 3-striped mutant mosquito and becomes suspicious. He wonders if it was the same insect that bit the girl from the hunting group earlier. With the mosquito in his hand, he allows the poison to circulate through his body to understand its effects. He realizes that the poison disperses his internal energy and makes the Awakened lose their mana. As he thought, the poison is similar to the one from the martial world that disperses internal energy. But unlike the other world, this poison is dangerous and has no known cure here. If he can figure out the exact components, he can use Gun's knowledge to create an antidote. To be sure, the protagonist sees no other choice but to taste the mosquito's poison. He covers his nose and takes a deep breath, feeling the taste and effects of the poison in his body. Then he swallows and feels the poison spread completely through his veins and system. Fortunately, the components are similar, and he knows he can create the antidote with the right herbs. The young man decides he will test his ideas as soon as he gets back to the city and out of the forest. Suddenly, he senses a strange presence and becomes alert to whatever it may be. He turns around and is shocked by what he sees slowly approaching him. A huge orc with glowing red eyes appears and shouts for the human to perish right there. The creature is gigantic and has an irregular build, different from the others he faced before. The protagonist realizes it must be an elite, the awakened version of a magic beast he's heard about. He doesn't understand what's happening, as this is neither the orcs nor the mosquito's habitat. With an axe in hand, the creature charges forward, shouting for the human to perish and prepares to attack. The monster swings its weapon with incredible force, and the blow is fast and very powerful. The axe hits the ground and creates a huge crater, showing the enemy's absurd strength. The protagonist is surprised by the monster's power and knows it is of a very high level. He takes out his coins and knows his normal attacks won't work against this enemy. Using the flying dagger art, he throws a single flash of coins to test the orc's power. The coins hit the orc dead on, but it barely seems to feel the attack. The weapons hit its skin and are repelled by a strong golden energy. The creature's defense is very strong, and the coins can't pierce its body. Just as the protagonist imagined, his strongest attack didn't work against the monster. He backs away and thinks that his strongest hidden weapon technique was completely useless. The young man wonders if the poison of the blood seal palm would be enough to defeat it. The creature roars in anger and prepares to counterattack with all its might. At that moment, the young man scolds himself for hesitating in front of such a powerful enemy. He worries that a single attack didn't work and thinks he's pathetic for it. The boy acknowledges that he got too confident after defeating the easy orcs, but he decides that no matter what comes, he will take it down until he collapses. For this is the way of the absolute poison demon, and he uses his strongest technique. The orc charges with its axe, ready to crush its opponent without any mercy. The protagonist then charges as well, and the two collide with a great impact. The orc's strength is immense, and the young man is thrown far away by the brutal blow. A large explosion of green energy occurs at the point of impact. The orc's axe shatters into pieces and falls to the ground after the clash of powers. The protagonist is on the ground while the monster is still standing and intact. He realizes the blow was shallow and didn't cause any real damage to the main body. So if that's the case, he'll have to take the monster down again and again until he wins. Suddenly, a weapon appears out of nowhere and strikes the orc with a fatal and precise blow. Countless cuts appear on the monster's body, slicing it into several pieces. The protagonist is completely shocked and doesn't understand what just happened. He wonders how someone sliced an elite with such ease and power. A mysterious man appears and Taeju realizes he has to be a master. As he thinks of an excuse, the man calls him over to talk about the fight. The orc's body dissolves and the newcomer asks if it was Taeju who did that. He comments that the young man has no tattoo, so he is not an awakened one like him. Then the man falls silent for a moment, looking the protagonist in the eyes. He introduces himself as Lee Jung-hak, vigilant captain of the Gorai Committee and guild leader. Taeju notices the man's authoritative tone and knows he needs to choose his words carefully. Before he can answer, the head porter returns and shouts the protagonist's name. The man is worried about the cargo and Taeju reassures him, saying the gentleman arrived just in time. The leader is confused and doesn't understand which gentleman the young man is talking about. Then he sees Lee Jung-hak and his companions and apologizes for being late. The man explains that Jung-hak is an awakened master and one of the committee members with voting rights. He also says that porters like them have to pay a tribute to his guild for security. The leader then realizes he's talking too much and pushes Taeju to thank him for the help. The guild leader then asks if the young man is just a porter and didn't take down the orcs. Taeju lies and says a mage defeated the monsters but fainted, and then the elite appeared. One of the guild members reports that they caught the survivor, and that the cleanup crew is coming. The leader agrees and turns to leave with his group, leaving the protagonist behind. But before leaving, he turns and looks at the young man, who becomes a bit tense. He gives Taeju some advice not to cause trouble, because next time he won't save him. The head porter says goodbye, and the guild leader finally leaves with his group. Relieved, the leader tells the young man to avoid the man, because if he gets in his way, his life is over. He explains that Jung-hak is the captain in name only and that he accepts bribes from criminals. The leader reveals that he only called him because he was in a hurry and found him by chance in the forest. He finishes by saying that masters are like natural disasters and it's best not to get involved. The protagonist thinks that if it weren't for Jung-hak, he would have been in real danger at that moment. A month has passed since the soul link, and he wonders what he's been doing all this time. He feels ashamed and sorry for Gun-hak, as he was arrogant with his new power. But with eyes full of determination, he decides that things will change from now on. The young man then vows to himself that he will get stronger no matter what happens. Back in Gorai, we see that the city's infrastructure is good, but some things are still lacking. The main example is the lack of a decent hospital, as few doctors come to the city. The few who venture out are usually fugitive charlatans, and the citizens avoid them. As a result, the number of drugstores or pharmacies in the city has naturally increased. Gorai's pharmacists are authorized to issue prescriptions and sell approved medicines. And with that, business is booming, as it's more logical to buy medicine than to go to a hospital. With a new hood and sunglasses, he goes to the city to sell the antidote he created. He suffered for a whole month to make the medicine, working as a porter to save money. With a smile, he feels relieved because he has reached the 3rd stage and won't get beaten up anymore. If he can close this deal, he won't have to worry about money for a while. The young man enters Bake's pharmacy and is greeted with a welcome from the store's employees. A clerk asks what he needs, but the young man says he wants to speak with the store owner. The young woman is confused by the request and politely asks him to repeat what he said. With a smile, he says he's not there to buy anything, but to sell a product. The clerk laughs at the situation, and an older man approaches to see what's happening. The store owner appears and comes closer to understand the situation with the new customer. He introduces himself as Baekong Pio, CEO of the pharmacy and also director of an orphanage. Tae-ju says he's there to sell a medicine he made himself and opens his bag. The owner sighs and thinks that a new street vendor shows up every day to bother him. He says he's not interested and suggests the young man go to the local job market. But the protagonist places a vial on the counter and says it's an antidote for the mosquito. The owner was about to send him away but stops when he hears the word "huntidoted" and is surprised. He turns around and asks what the antidote is for, as he is very curious about the proposal. The young man then repeats that it's an antidote for the three-striped mutant mosquito from the forest. The owner is silent for a moment and stares at the vial with a serious expression. Tae-ju explains that it's for oral use and can be taken in advance to prevent the bite. And to make the man even more interested, he reveals that the effect lasts for up to 10 hours. The owner becomes furious with the young man's audacity and doesn't believe a word he says. He yells that if you're going to trick someone, at least do it with something believable and curses at him. The protagonist then places 2 more bottles on the counter and leaves a gift for the man. He hands him a card with his contact information and tells the owner to test the product if he's interested. He warns that the owner has until midnight that night to contact him. Before leaving, the young man warns that if he doesn't hear from him, he will take the product to another pharmacy. Tae-ju leaves, leaving everyone in the store completely speechless and confused by the situation. The owner and the other customers wonder if the young man is crazy to make such a proposal. One of the customers picks up one of the vials and is amazed by the idea of a mosquito antidote. A warrior named Park Jin-soo asks the owner if he's going to buy the antidote the young man left. The store owner is thoughtful as the warrior holds the vial curiously in his hand. Unsure of what to do, the owner picks up one of the samples to better analyze the product. He then says that the only way to know if it works is to test the medicine to see the result. The man has no hope, as even the big companies have failed, but the young man's confidence bothers him. Just then, the employee asks Park to put the vial down, but he insists they need to test it. Without a second thought, the warrior tips the bottle and drinks the entire contents, shocking everyone. But to everyone's surprise, he says the liquid has no taste and seems to be just water. The pharmacy owner is completely incredulous and questions if the medicine is really just water. He doubts it as the potion addict should feel some medicinal effect, but the man denies it. The warrior explains that an antidote would give some energy, but the liquid is literally just water. He then throws the vial in the trash and says the young man is just a con artist and they can throw the rest away. Even so, the owner has a nagging feeling and wonders if he was just a con artist. The warrior then ignores the situation and asks the clerk to ring up his basket full of potions. He confirms he's going frog hunting and laughs, saying he was delayed by testing the con artist's drug. The bill comes to 3,250,000 won, and he complains about the price but pays it all. He then says goodbye to Chief Bake and leaves the store, wishing the clerk a good day. The owner still holds the vial, thinking it was a useless hope and that the antidote is absurd. The scene then shifts to a forest at sunset, where we see a battle happening in the distance. A creature resembling a giant white wolf roars fiercely, preparing to attack. Out of nowhere, a blue reinforcement shield appears to defend against the beast's imminent attack. But the shield is attacked by red energy claws, and someone shouts about a blade-toothed marten. We see a warrior shouting and raising her sword to fight against the mysterious creature. One of the team members reports that the rear is clear and they need to retreat now. But the warrior reveals she was poisoned by a mosquito and feels her body slowly becoming paralyzed. The squad leader, Park Jin-soo, shouts for her to hang on as it will all be over when they take down the creature. Suddenly, he feels something on his body, and his expression changes to one of pure shock and surprise. He then realizes he is covered in mutant mosquitoes that landed on him without him noticing. One of the creatures bites him on the neck, and he knows the double poison will paralyze him and disperse his mana. Desperate, he understands that if he falls now, his entire team will be completely wiped out. His shield weakens, and he doesn't understand what went wrong, as they were wearing anti-insect suits. A blade-toothed marten appeared out of nowhere in a mutant frog hunting ground. Their suits were destroyed in an instant, and he didn't have time to react to the attack. He panicked and ended up getting hit as well, blaming himself for not paying more attention. After being bitten by the mosquitoes, they tried to retreat but couldn't escape. The martens blocked their escape route, and he wonders if it will all end this way. Just then, one of his companions shouts for him to watch out for the attack coming from behind. Startled, the leader turns and sees one of the creatures leaping to attack him with its claws. The marten charges forward with speed and with a strike of its red, blade-sharp tail. The attack hits the warrior's energy shield and shatters it into several pieces instantly. The creature breaks through the barrier and continues its advance toward the squad leader. Strangely, only the shield's reinforcement was destroyed, and he didn't lose any strength or mana. At that moment, he remembers the antidote he drank earlier at Bake's pharmacy. He realizes the medicine was real and that the mysterious young man wasn't a con artist. He then composes himself and prepares to fight with all his strength against the creature. He holds his sword firmly and concentrates for the monster's next attack. If the antidote is real, he knows he might have a chance to win the battle. With this newfound hope, he charges forward with a determined look to face the creature. Later that night at Bake's pharmacy, the doorbell rings, announcing a customer. Park rushes into the store and shouts the owner's name, who is surprised by the visit. Desperate, the warrior asks the price of the antidote and shouts that he will buy the entire stock. The scene shifts to the Guri market, where we see many people in stalls everywhere. At one of the stalls, a vendor announces blade sable meat for 5 million won. Another vendor offers magic beast armor starting at 50 million won. Taeju walks through the market amazed, as it's the first time he's seen something so big. He thinks taking the day off was the right decision and takes the opportunity to stroll around. To make the antidote, he needed to reach the 3rd star of the poison spirit art. This was because he needed delicate control of internal energy to extract the components. He thinks the overexertion put him in a resting state to process the poison. Additionally, he needed some time to recover and adapt to his new power. The pharmacy owner is desperate and shouts that he wants to sign the contract and buy all the bottles. With a smile, the young man asks if the effects of the medicine were satisfactory for him. The man says the medicine will revolutionize hunting and apologizes for calling him crazy. The young man asks what he said, but the owner changes the subject and asks about the stock quantity. Our hero then reveals that he has about 60,000 bottles ready for immediate sale. With a confident look, he assures that if the stock runs out, he can produce more immediately. The owner shows the contract and says the cost will be 10,000 won for them to sell at 50,000. The young man thinks these are great terms, as the real cost is less than 100 and the batch will yield 30 billion. He calculates that after the 10% tax, the total will be 27 billion won. The pharmacist then offers to supply exclusively for a year at 35,000 per bottle. The young man says he knows the man runs an orphanage and wants to help him for that reason. Rumors say that Baekong Pyo is like a father to all the orphan children in the city of Guri. He then reveals that he knows the profits go to the orphanage and just wants to help with the business. In return, the boy only asks for a manufacturing location, leaving the pharmacy owner very emotional. The man calls him a saint, and with a handshake, the two finally close the deal. After signing the contract and receiving a good advance, he went to the Guri market. He walks calmly down the street, observing the various stalls and people in the area. Suddenly, a muscular man calls out to him and asks if he needs a new weapon. The protagonist is surprised by the approach and asks if the vendor is talking to him. The vendor points to his shop and says it's the best in the region, and he doesn't need to go far. He also says that because the young man is handsome, he'll even get a special discount on the purchase. Awkwardly, the young man refuses the offer and says he needs absolutely nothing at the moment. The man grabs him from behind and insists he at least take a look at the shop's products. The vendor drags him, and the boy is amazed by his strength, even while using his 3rd star power. He then wonders if this blacksmith could be a hidden master in disguise. Inside the shop, we see several well-made warhammers displayed for customers. The man shows him the swords and asks what the young man thinks, as they're not bad at all. Impressed, Taeju asks if he made everything himself, and the blacksmith confirms, boasting about being the best. With a green glint in his eye, the protagonist analyzes the weapons with his special power. He realizes the quality is exceptional and that he shouldn't have judged a man by his appearance. The young man then shows a drawing to the blacksmith and asks him to make 100 units of that weapon. The man recognizes the design as willow leaf daggers but finds them too small for throwing. Analyzing the design, he suggests using mana steel as the material to cause damage when thrown. With a serious look, the protagonist asks if it's really possible to make the weapons he requested. The blacksmith confirms but warns it will take time due to a lack of material, and Taeju agrees and asks for the price. The man calculates everything, and with a discount for being handsome, the total comes to 250 million won. The young man finds the price high but was expecting it, and decides to pay the full amount in advance. Happy with the deal, the vendor promises to send the samples and says goodbye to the satisfied customer. Now with the daggers secured, the young man thinks the next step is to find good armor. He needs clothes that can hide his weapons, like the ones Master Gun used to wear. But he imagines himself in a long robe and finds the idea too embarrassing for modern times. Therefore, he decides to look for modern armor he can wear instead of the traditional robe. At that moment, he hears a voice calling him and turns to see who is speaking to him. A girl with fox ears approaches him and hands him a flyer about beast leather armor. He sees a leather coat on the flyer and realizes it would be a great option for everyday wear. Suddenly, he sees a familiar person and decides to leave to avoid future trouble. He gave the credit for the fight to the mage and knows that if the truth comes out, he'll have to move. But before he could leave, someone grabs his arm and stops him in his tracks. To his surprise, it's the red-haired mage he saved, and she asks if it was really him. In a flashback, we see the mage agreeing with the guild that she defeated the orcs alone. The young man tries to deny it, saying a simple porter couldn't defeat the monsters alone. But another flashback shows one of the hunters thanking the young man for recovering the bodies. The mage is moved with gratitude, and the protagonist doesn't know how to react to the situation. He admits that he fought to save lives but also wanted to test his new fighting techniques. The woman apologizes for putting her savior in such an uncomfortable position. An orange-haired assistant appears and scolds the mage for keeping the client waiting. Taeju is startled by the scolding, and the red-haired mage apologizes and turns to leave. Suddenly, the woman named Jiang Yeonhee kneels in front of the young man, shocking everyone. She bows as a sign of respect and says she cannot sell the coat he chose earlier. The protagonist is completely confused and wonders why she is talking about the coat now. The assistant is furious and yells that it can't be true because they've already taken the client's measurements. The The red-haired woman explains that the coat is her most valuable possession. Something unexpected came up. The client then says she will personally compensate for the incident and apologizes for the inconvenience. But the assistant is not convinced, and the client interrupts her, saying that's enough. Without further discussion, the woman turns to leave, leaving the assistant behind, bewildered. The young woman runs after her boss, asking why she gave up, and the woman just says it's okay. Our hero observes the scene and comments that they were important clients and put him in a tight spot. The woman says it's no problem, that she should be the one apologizing for catching him by surprise. She then smiles and teases the young man, saying people must say he's not very perceptive. Tae-ju denies it, and the woman thinks he still doesn't understand the situation even after everything. With a smile, she reveals that she is planning to give him that coat as a gift. The protagonist is completely shocked and speechless, asking what she means by that. The mage explains that she wants to repay him for saving her life with that fox fur coat. Awkwardly, the young man refuses the gift, saying he didn't save her for any noble reason. The woman insists, saying the intention doesn't matter because what counts is that she survived thanks to him. She asks him to save more people so they don't lose their lives like her beloved did. Moved, he thinks it's the first time in his life he has received gratitude from someone in that way. He has always been the target of criticism and contempt and admits he feels overwhelmed by the gesture. But with a slight smile, the young man admits to himself that the feeling of being thanked isn't bad. So he decides to accept the gift since the woman insists so much on thanking him for what he did. Relieved, she calls him over to quickly take his measurements to adjust the coat for him. The scene then shifts to a place with floating islands, and someone lets out a long sigh. We see a man flying on a sword through the sky of what appears to be the immortal realm. An old man lying down with a creature in his mouth complains that he's bored and has nothing to do. This is the sword immortal Dongbin, and he wonders what kind of immortal realm this is. He complains that everyone is an old man with a white beard and hair, and the others are offended by the comment. Suddenly, he spots someone different sitting on the edge of a cliff and becomes curious. Dongbin notes that the man from the Tang clan came from the martial world, but is the only one who stands out. He thinks about how the master suddenly changed and even started talking about and call their world. Bored, the sword immortal decides he will ask the man to teach him how to make clothes too. With this decision, the sword immortal gets on his weapon and prepares to go to the master. He then thinks that if he gives the man something valuable, he will probably teach him easily. With a smile, he picks a celestial Dao peach from the immortal realm to use as a bribe. The scene then shifts back to the free city of Gurai in the territory of the Salmon Empire. We see a double-decker bus passing through the streets, showing how modern the city is. In the distance, a woman with her assistant observes a building that looks like a large castle. The assistant complains about the wall, and the other young woman thinks it's just exaggerated vanity. The girl with glasses explains that access is restricted only to the city's rich and powerful. The harassed young Yanni gets angry and says that people with power hide behind the excuse of security. The assistant asks if she came all this way for a coat, and the boss corrects her about the rare fur. The woman explains that the armor has great defense and still keeps the person cool in the summer. The young woman with glasses is amazed and says it was worth taking a vacation to see that. She reveals that the young woman's grandfather sent a black card, but the heiress refuses and shows her independence. Just then, the bus announces the stop at the Gurui market and asks passengers to prepare. The two then get off and walk to the boutique, because the heiress wants to see the coat in person. Back to the protagonist, he is thoughtfully looking at the flyer he received earlier. He thinks a demonic beast leather coat could be a good substitute for a robe. With this idea in mind, he enters the shop and greets the people inside. The heiress and her assistant see him and think he's also after the same rare coat. But the red-haired shop owner greets him with a smile and thanks him for visiting. She then recognizes him as the porter Kim Tae-ju, and he pretends not to know her to play it cool. The woman reminds him of the orc attack a month ago and shows him a flashback of the battle. The young man finally remembers her lying on the ground and asks what she's doing there. The woman explains that the shop is her main job and that she had been looking for him for a while. The scene then cuts to Baek's orphanage in the city of Gurai at another time of day. Someone descends a staircase in a mysterious and dark place that looks like a secret basement. The person reaches a hallway with a vault door at the end and several cabinets around. Then the protagonist's hand dips into a glowing green liquid with strong energy. Satisfied with the result, Tae-ju admires his work and says the antidote turned out very well. He then picks up a headset and puts it on to communicate with someone in secret. On the other end of the line, Baek Hongpyo answers, and the young man informs him that the undiluted solution is ready. The man is relieved and says the stock is almost gone and asks when he can send it. The owner explains that the medicine's effectiveness has spread, and now there's a crowd wanting to buy it. With the severe stocking, the inventory ran out quickly, and a group of hunters is fighting over more boxes. With a smirk, the protagonist says to announce a steady supply and limit purchases. The owner worries about the popularity and fears that a counterfeit medicine will appear soon. But the young man opens a vial and says that for now, it's impossible for them to copy his secret formula. He explains that even if they manage to, he can create a different medicine, and that copying is impossible. Baek then asks the CEO to hurry the delivery and asks when the packaging machines will arrive. The protagonist complains that he hasn't been able to go home for a week and promises to hurry. Suddenly, two children appear, and the girl warns the boy not to go because the place is haunted. The boy ignores her and says a beggar stole their secret base, and he's going to kick him out. Suddenly, the vault door starts to open by itself, and the children are shocked by the scene. Dark smoke pours out, and a shadowy, mysterious figure emerges from the darkness. With glowing eyes and a creepy smile, the protagonist appears and greets the children. Frightened, the children scream in fear and run away, terrified by the unexpected appearance. The boy shouts that it's a stinky ghost and pulls the girl to run away as fast as possible. The young man finds the comment cruel, as he barely managed to finish packing everything in time to leave. He sniffs himself and wonders if he smells that bad, as he hasn't showered in a week. Suddenly, the head porter appears, desperate, and begs Kim to save him. A woman interrupts him and asks if he is really Kim Ju, which makes him a bit tense. She says her father told her about the business, and the children accuse her of being a ghost monster. He confirms his identity and asks who she is, not understanding what's happening. The young woman then introduces herself as Baek Seo, Yaon from the orphanage and the pharmacy owner's daughter. She explains that the children talked about a ghost in the basement, and she came to check the situation. The young woman also reveals that she came to deliver a box from the MX weapon shop to the protagonist. Happy, he takes the box and thanks her, as he needed the prototype just in time for his plans. Seo Yat is embarrassed by the scene and says she hopes the good relationship with her father continues. She then says goodbye and takes the children to bathe before they leave. The young man is left alone in the basement and says goodbye to them, still a bit confused by the whole situation. He then decides to check the package before showering and seems very eager to see the weapons. Upon opening the box, the young man finds the daggers and a note that catches his attention among them. The note is from the blacksmith, and the protagonist is annoyed by the cheeky message he left. With an expression of pure rage, the young man tears the note into several pieces without a second thought. After calming down, he picks up one of the daggers from the box to inspect the prototype's quality. With a satisfied smile, he notes that the item looks plausible and is very sharp and solid. The young man tests the dagger's weight and grip and realizes it fits perfectly in his hand. Seeing the good result, he becomes even more anxious to receive his new, custom-made coat. In a flashback, the mage says she'll give him the coat for free, but he thinks he should pay for the item. He knows time is short and he needs to hurry, but he decides to take a shower before leaving. The scene then shifts to the Mount Jerry demonic beast border zone, a very dangerous place. There we see a group of hunters and porters gathered in the forest, preparing for a mission. Chief O spots the protagonist approaching in the distance and calls his name excitedly. The man waves with a smile and welcomes Mr. Kim, who joins their group. Taeju apologizes for being the last to arrive, but the chief says he arrived right on time. The young man thanks the chief for his help, and one of the hunters calls him in a very rude and aggressive manner. A man with a ponytail complains that a simple porter shouldn't be the last to arrive. This is Kwon Dong-sik, a member of the attack team who seems to dislike the protagonist very much. Our hero replies that he wasn't late, so he sees no reason to apologize. The man becomes furious with the response and threatens the young man, asking if he'll apologize if he gets sliced. With a cold look, Taeju understands why he ended up as a substitute, as everyone flees from this group. The chief whispers for him to endure it because the contract's penalty fee is very high. The young man then calms down and thinks he's used to this and apologizes to the man. Kwon warns him to consider himself lucky and turns to leave with the rest of the group. The chief asks if he's okay, and with everyone gathered, the group finally prepares to leave. Taeju questions the group's size, as for the scale of the raid, they would need more people. He then asks the hunter if they are really going with so few people on the mission. The man gets angry and asks what a porter knows and if he has a death wish. Kwon becomes enraged and shouts that the protagonist is a scoundrel who's going to perish anyway. With an icy glare, the young man repeats the phrase and seems not to like what he just heard at all. With his sword in hand, the man threatens the protagonist and says he will finish him right there. The group leader, Kwon Dong-sik, intervenes but also threatens the young man if he complains again. The aggressor scoffs and says he's never heard a porter question the number of people on a raid. The leader laughs at the situation, but the man continues his threats, saying the young man will be gone if he runs. With his eyes glowing green, the hero gets angry and wonders if he should just eliminate both of them. Before the fight continues, the leader tells everyone to take the antidote so they can move on. The chief apologizes for the unnecessary favor, but Taeju is still worried about the small group. The man explains that thanks to the antidote, the number of people needed for the hunt has decreased. He then hands a vial to the young man and says he brought one especially for him for safety. The young man thanks him and thinks that the power he now possesses has caused a new change in his life. He remembers the mage's words and her request for him to save more people in the future. With his new power, he can save many lives, and he drinks the antidote, thinking about the change in himself. He reflects that he has already lost control of his intent to take them down twice because of those guys. The young man understands that the reason for this is the influence of Tang Gunk, the absolute poison demon. The master's nature of eliminating those he dislikes without hesitation is starting to affect him. He feels that the old master's poison heart is assimilating with his own heart, but he doesn't think it's a bad change, as he was too weak to survive in this world before. With a serious look, the protagonist warns the chief to stay close to him during the entire raid. Suddenly, a giant red wolf appears, and Taeju warns that he's not joking about the danger. He reveals that he has been feeling an intent to take someone down coming from the forest for some time. The scene then shifts to the world of Miram, showing the Juche clan in flames and destruction. Someone floats over the burning city, observing the chaos spreading everywhere. A wounded old man stands amidst the rubble and seems to be the only survivor of the attack. Juche and the clan's patriarch shouts in anger at Tang Gun, asking if he has gone mad. The master calls him shameless and reveals his other identity as the Lightning Demon. He reveals that he knows the clan was conspiring with the demonic cult and attacks him with swords. The man denies the accusation and says they are one of the 5 great clans and would not do such a thing. But the master doesn't believe him and says the demonic cult's lackeys always declare themselves innocent. Juche is completely terrified by the power of the attack coming towards him. Tang Gun grabs him and asks if he shouldn't say hello to his own son. He was sacrificing innocent people and using their blood to create demonic pills, so he was brought here. With a furious look, the master asks if the man still thinks all of this is just slander. He says he hates people who use the weak as a shield to save their own lives. Desperate, the patriarch begs for his life and offers to tell everything he knows about the celestial demon. The master says that's enough and that many warriors have perished for no reason because of his actions. With his hand glowing with purple energy, the master simply tells the man to disappear. With a devastating attack, he promises that he will soon send the celestial demon to join him. With one final blow, he finally sends him to the other world without any mercy or hesitation. Back in the forest, the hunting party easily defeats a pack of martens without any equipment. The hunter shows the crystals and mocks the protagonist, asking if he is satisfied now. The young man thinks angrily that they only managed to hunt those creatures because of his antidote. He clenches his fist and wonders if he should finish them off right there since they are going to be gone soon anyway. But he holds back because he thinks trash like them are not worthy of being his first targets. The young man observes that thanks to the antidote, they managed to take down an entire pack of martens. But with a serious look, he knows the situation is not as simple as it seems to them. He then wonders if the group can really handle what is about to happen. Our hero then warns the chief to stay close to him because the real hunt is about to begin. He says it's no big deal, just a notoriously difficult beast from that same mountain. The creature then reveals itself as a giant red wolf in a surprise ambush for the group. The head porter is completely terrified upon seeing the creature and stammers, unable to speak. One of the hunters screams in fear upon recognizing the creature and identifies it as a red-furred wolf. Taeju calmly tells the chief not to worry and pushes him away, asking for a moment. This is the red-furred wolf, a beast that requires at least a regular rank hunter to fight. But the biggest problem with these creatures is that they always hunt in male and female pairs. The hunter turns in shock and realizes too late that there is another wolf attacking his companions. He then charges with his sword to protect one of the women in the group and shouts for the creature to perish. But with impressive agility, the wolf simply dodges the attack without any effort. The man is shocked by the dodge, and one of the group members asks what the orders are now. But instead of fighting, the squad leader simply turns and starts running to escape. The woman panics, but the hunter tells her to shut up and says to do what they always do. The man then reveals his plan to use the porters as bait for them to escape. Desperate, the head porter asks Mr. Kim to show something because the situation is dire. With a determined look, our hero says he will show what he is capable of and draws one of his daggers. Using the dagger art, he launches a single flash of green energy towards one of the hunters. The attack flies at high speed and hits the target head on with a great explosion of power. To everyone's surprise, the blow hits the group leader instead of the wolf he was facing. The dagger gets stuck in a rock, and a large column of green energy explodes at the point of impact. The sound of something breaking echoes through the forest, and birds fly away, startled by the noise. Completely shocked by the scene, the head porter wonders what just happened. The young man narrates that one of them abandons the team, while the other plans to hand him over to the beast. With a sinister green aura, he says he hates the kind of trash that steps on the weak to save themselves. The ponytail hunter screams in pain and realizes his ear was hit by the attack. He turns around, completely shocked and not understanding how that could have happened to him. The man then sees the wolf as down on the ground and wonders when the creature was defeated. In disbelief, the chief asks Mr. Kim how he managed to eliminate the wolf with a single blow. But the danger is not over yet, and the other wolf glares at the group with a look full of fury. With a poison aura, our hero advances and tells the creature to simply shut up. He then threatens the wolf and warns that if it takes one more step, it will perish right there without a chance. With an icy glare, he turns to the hunters and asks if they always did that. He wants to know if they always throw the weaker ones to the wolves so they can escape danger. The hunter shouts that it's natural for the weak to fall, for the good of the stronger awakened. With a look of pure contempt, the protagonist finally understands their distorted logic. So he decides they will have to experience the same feeling that the others felt. With a quick movement, he launches an attack, and the hunters panic with the wolf. From a distance, the young man just watches the scene and tells them to fight for their own lives now. The leader and the other hunter are completely stunned by the turn of events. Sitting on a rock, he warns that he has already taken care of one of the wolves, and the other is their problem. Furious, the leader asks if he thinks he can get away with messing with an awakened one like him. One of the women in the group pleads for help, but the leader yells at her to shut up right away. But a dagger grazes the leader's face and hits the woman who is right behind him. Another dagger hits the leader, and the young man says that since he doesn't understand words, he doesn't need ears. With a green aura, he repeats that he is the porter, and they are the combatants on this mission. He then taunts the leader, asking where all the confidence from when they were hunting martens went. The wolf charges with fury, and the young man simply orders the hunters to fight the beast. With his eyes glowing green, he repeats the order for the group to fight for their own lives. The hunters are completely paralyzed with fear, not knowing what to do with the order they received. Kwon refuses to obey and says they won't do what a simple porter tells them to do. The wolf then roars, and the protagonist comments that it seems they have other ideas in mind. Desperate, the man yells for everyone to split up and try to escape the giant creature. But the wolf is faster and lands a direct blow to the face of the hunter, who is trying to flee. With a single attack, the beast sends him flying with brutal force and no mercy. The leader, lying on the ground, swears he will finish off the porter for doing that to him and his group. But before he could do anything, the giant wolf's mouth approaches to deliver the final blow. One of the women in the group screams desperately for the others to run and escape from that place. The wolf then turns and quickly advances towards the woman, who is paralyzed with fear. She panics completely, seeing the creature's claws approaching her face. The creature then stops for a moment and stares at the survivors with a look full of hatred. Its red eyes glow intensely, showing all its fury and its killer instinct. Without further hesitation, the wolf continues its attack and prepares to eliminate all the hunters. The head porter screams in desperation, warning that the monster is coming towards them. But our hero remains calm and says that if they had left, they would have remained alive. He gets annoyed and thinks that eliminating some trash gave the beast confidence despite the power difference. A dagger appears floating, and he realizes there's no other way to resolve the situation. Concentrating energy in his hand, the protagonist simply tells the creature to perish at once. Then a large blast of energy is fired towards the giant wolf with immense power. Using the twin blood poison palm, he creates a devastating vortex of green energy. The attack explodes with incredible force and destroys a large part of the surrounding forest. The chief is shocked and doesn't understand how he is so strong without an awakened tattoo. He then remembers the orcs and realizes it was the young man, not the mage, who defeated them before. The young man lands and says it's refreshing to stretch a bit, and the chief understands he saw everything. Terrified, the head porter begs the protagonist to spare his life. With an awkward smile, the young man scratches his head and asks why he would suddenly take him down. The man is relieved by the answer but is still very scared of what he just witnessed. The young man then asks the chief to stand up and asks if he got hurt during the confusion. Relieved by the request, the protagonist asks if he can ask a favor of the head porter. With a sinister smile, he asks the man to forget everything he saw that day. The chief immediately agrees and assures him that he saw absolutely nothing of what happened. With that, the two decide to go down the mountain and leave that place as quickly as possible. On the forest floor, we see the bodies of the hunters lying lifeless after the attack. The young man thinks that if he leaves the bodies there, the monsters will take care of everything for him. He knows that those who use the weak as a shield to save themselves deserve the same fate. The scene then shifts to Gurai Castle at the headquarters of YJ Pharmacy, a large building. In a meeting room, a man is seated and seems to be very angry about something. With a punch on the table, he complains that his company's sales have dropped by half. A newspaper shows the news about the antidote and the young man's rise as the city's richest person. Another man complains that they should have crushed that small shop a long time ago. Oh Nambok, the owner of New Horizon, says they control 70% of the pharmacies. Lee Gilho, owner of Gorai Nuri, complains about the committee that protects Baek Hong, Pio, and his orphanage. One of the men gets angry at the complaint and tells the other to offer a solution. But Jo Hoon-seok, the CEO of YJ Pharmacy, interrupts the fight and asks them to calm down. With a smile, he tells them to stop testing the waters and share what they already know. He then reveals that all attempts to copy the drug have failed, and the others agree. Oh Nambok says they will eventually succeed and that it's just a matter of time. Lee Gil gets angry and says the problem is now, as they will go bankrupt if they keep waiting. With a smirk, the CEO suggests they do things the way they always have. Lee Gilho understands the hint and asks if the investigation on the young man is ready. The man then presses a red button and tells the others to take a look at what he found. A hologram shows the information of Kim Tae-ju, the 29-year-old developer of the antidote. One of the men is surprised to see that the target is the son of an awakened master and becomes worried. But the CEO laughs and says that's just the surface information and the real story starts now. He continues saying that Tae-ju is a rejecter and was kicked out of his house before enlisting. Lee Gilho laughs at the situation and says it's a classic story and the young man must have cut ties. The CEO suggests they meet with him first and offer him the distribution rights. With a smile, he says that if the young man refuses, they can do what they always do and get rid of him. The scene then shifts to the Jurisan Monster Defense Corps in the Salmon Empire. In an office, a man knocks on the door, and the commander tells him to enter immediately. A woman enters, salutes, and the commander asks if she has investigated what he requested. She hands him a report and says she obtained information from the Autonomous Committee of Guray City. The commander reads the report and confirms the rumors that the young man is the general's son. He remembers that the army was turned down due to lack of stock, but now everything could change. With the antidote, they could launch a large-scale purge before the wave of monsters. Oh Jinhain, commander and lieutenant general, orders them to contact the Paju territory. The scene then shifts to the Paju domain, showing a large mansion in an isolated location. In a luxurious office, a man receives orders over the phone and carries them out without hesitation. An officer picks up the phone and seems to be receiving information about what happened. With a smile, he comments that even a worm can turn at some point in life. In the room, Tae-ju's father and his wife are talking about the son he no longer even considered. The woman suggests going to Guri immediately and worries that he might be tricked with the money. But the general tells her to leave him alone, as he has nothing to do with the family anymore. The woman gets angry, and her husband says they have already removed him from the register, and he is no longer their son. Mitsu scoffs and asks if he can cut blood teas so easily and insists on helping. The general tells her to stop and accuses her of having no conscience for what she tried to do before. He clenches his fist and says it doesn't matter if the young man knows because Jang-in Dong is already gone. The woman then suggests at least asking him to provide the antidote for the army. She pressures him and asks if Tae-ju is his only son if he doesn't care about the others. Out of patience, the man crosses his hands and tells her to go ask the young man personally. The general gets angry and makes it very clear that he will not do what the woman is asking. Mitsui becomes furious with her husband's refusal and grits her teeth in hatred of the situation. With a determined look, she decides that if her husband won't help, she will do things her way. The woman then leaves the room and slams the door, showing all her anger and frustration. The scene shifts to the young man's father, who seems to be thinking alone in his office. He says he hasn't heard from his son in months and thought the young man was already gone. With a satisfied smile, the general thinks that his son is living well, and that's a relief. Meanwhile, in the Guri market, we see many people walking around and doing their shopping. The story then takes us to the facade of Flame Boutique, a very chic shop in the city. Inside the shop, several elegant coats are hanging on a rack, waiting for customers. The protagonist is trying on the new coat while the mage helps him with the final adjustments. With a smile, she says she knew the piece would perfectly match the young man's style. Looking at himself in the mirror, he thanks her and notices that the coat made from a monster is very different. The young man admires his new look and likes that the gray color doesn't stand out so much in a crowd. He is also very satisfied with the ample storage space for his new weapons. The woman asks if he is a weapon awakened, and he just replies that it's something similar. Our hero then insists he can't accept it for free, but she says it's the price for saving her life. He remembers the coat belonged to someone else, but the mage reassures him about the situation. The woman explains that Miss Jeong Yanho is fine and that she has already found another item. With his arms crossed, the protagonist seems to finally accept the woman's gift. Suddenly, he points to a part of the shop and says he will take everything, to her surprise. With a card in hand, he says he will give it as a gift to the orphanage and help with sales. The woman agrees with the idea and says she will pack everything for him and asks him to wait. He thinks she is a different kind of awakened one and a very kind person indeed. At that moment, a man appears and says he has been looking for Kim Tae-ju for a long time. He introduces himself as Cho Hook-seok from YJ Pharmacy and hands a business card to the young man. The protagonist takes the card and stares at it with a serious expression, not understanding what he wants. The man smiles and asks if his sudden visit has made him uncomfortable in any way. Without beating around the bush, the young man asks what his business is and how he managed to find him there. The man boasts and there's nothing the Pharmacy Association doesn't know in Guri. He then asks the protagonist to also supply the mosquito poison antidote to them. With a smirk, the young man asks if that is a favor or a direct threat. The man says that for now it's a favor, but Tae-ju simply refuses the offer on the spot. He says he doesn't want to become a man without honor and refuses the CEO's proposal without hesitation. The man then offers 5 billion for the antidote's formula, but the protagonist refuses the offer. With a smirk, the young man bites his lip and seems to be enjoying the CEO's proposal. The man threatens him, saying he won't be able to establish himself in the city if he continues like this. Our hero ignores the threat, and the mage asks who the visitor he received in the shop was. Angered, the CEO calls someone and says to start the work they always do with those who refuse. The scene then shifts to the outskirts of Guri City, at the construction site of Kim Tae-ju's village. Full of bags, the young man arrives at the site and informs Chief Baek that he is there. The man sees him and asks about the bags he is carrying with him at that moment. The young man explains that since he always receives help, he decided to buy some clothes for the children. The head porter is completely moved by the gesture and starts to cry with gratitude. He calls him a saint and promises to work even harder to repay all the kindness. The young man smiles and says he is glad he liked the gifts for the children. With the construction going well, the chief decides he will accept the proposal the protagonist made earlier. The man then asks if he has finally decided on what they talked about before. Tae-ju confirms and says that the YJ representative gave him the certainty he needed. The chief worries and asks if the man tried to harm him in any way during the visit. But the young man reveals that thanks to the threat, he realized how he is treated when he has no power. With a determined look, he decides to establish a pharmaceutical company and asks for help for the future. He asks the chief to take care of the construction, as he will be away for a while for his plans. Before creating the company, he needs to experiment and develop a new type of medicine. Next, we see an explanation of the primordial cow's poison spirit art created by Gun Ak. It combines the Qigong of the 5 elements with the enlightenment of various other martial arts. The art is composed of 10 stages, and each one unlocks new abilities and powers for the user. And only those who obtain the poison spirit can use the secret technique, Myriad Flower Rain. Just as Tang Gunnik did with the celestial demon, he can melt his enemies with poison. The scene then shifts to the Mount Jiri demonic beast apparition zone again. A large explosion of green energy occurs in the forest, showing that a fight is taking place. A mysterious figure leaps and attacks a giant creature with claws and immense power. The young man then absorbs a large amount of energy and prepares for the next attack. With a dagger in hand, he concentrates, and the weapon begins to glow with an intense light. With a powerful kick, he attacks the creature and sends it flying with impressive force. The blow hits dead on, and the creature is thrown against the trees with a great impact. With his dagger in hand, the protagonist lands stylishly as the creature falls lifeless to the ground. He recognizes the creature as a poison-clawed leopard cat, but the size of a tiger. The animal's skin was so tough that his weapons and internal energy barely had any effect. He knows he is still at a shameful level and needs to train more to get stronger. With Gunnik's knowledge, training is just a review, and he finds the poison gland. Since he started with full enlightenment, he can grow quickly as he consumes new poisons. Now with his body stabilized, he knows he will have no problem advancing to the next stage. If he can absorb the poisonous water deer, he will achieve his goal. The young man then remembers that he needs to retrieve his daggers and complains about the cost of the weapons. The poisonous water deer is a docile and non-preventive beast that lives in that same forest. The creature looks like a Bactrian camel with 2 humps on its back and a calm look. Without a second thought, the protagonist charges quickly towards the creature to attack it. But what makes it scary is that when it perishes, its humps suddenly burst. With this, the creature spreads microscopic and highly toxic spores throughout the area. A large cloud of purple spores spreads through the forest, and the young man is in the middle of it. He wonders if this is the poison that melts even the filters of gas masks. Impressed, he realizes that the poison is the strongest he has ever seen and cannot waste it. Without hesitation, the young man sits on the ground and begins to concentrate to absorb all the poison. With a determined look, he prepares to use all his power for what is to come. He then uses his technique to condense all the poisonous ki into a single sphere of energy. With the sphere in hand, he absorbs it into his body to convert it into internal energy and strengthen himself. Using the absolute chaos spirit art, he converts the poison into his own life energy. He concentrates and meditates to circulate the Q throughout his body and adapt to the new power. After a while, he finally absorbs all the poison that was spread in the air. He realizes the volume is so large that it's not easy to convert into internal energy all at once. But he managed to understand the components, and developing an antidote will be very easy for him. With this advantage, he knows he needs to get stronger as quickly as possible for his plans. He refuses to be weak as he was before and says he will never go through that again. With his hands, he holds the sphere of green energy and condenses it more and more for the next step. With an intense glow, the sphere floats in the air, and the young man announces that he has finally reached the 4th stage. Satisfied with his progress, he comments that it took a while to reach this new level. The young man stretches and gets up from the ground, feeling refreshed after the long training. He reflects that he stayed longer than expected on the mountain but got what he wanted. With his backpack on, the protagonist wonders if it's time to go back to the city. He knows that being away for so long has made him anxious because of YJ Pharmacy and its plans. The scene then shifts to Bake's Pharmacy, which seems to be closed and empty at night. Our hero arrives and leaves his backpack on the floor before entering to see what happened. He enters the shop and greets Mr. Bake, who is with his back turned, organizing some boxes. He notices that the shop is completely out of stock and wonders if business is going well. But the man recognizes him and says he was worried because he couldn't contact him by phone. One of the employees also welcomes the young man, who had been missing for a while. The young man explains that he turned off his cell phone for training and asks why everyone has such long faces. The chief reveals that the pharmaceutical company's representatives said they would no longer supply them. In addition, the committee requested the ingredient list for an investigation into side effects. The young man immediately suspects that all of this might be the work of Cho-hun, Seek and his evil plans. The chief confirms that it's the method he usually uses and reveals that he is a committee member. He then wonders what happens if they don't hand over the ingredient list for the investigation. The protagonist thinks that Cho-hun, Seek's attacks are just beginning and that he needs to act. With a furious look, he thinks that the behavior of trash like him never fails to surprise. Our hero then tells Mr. Bake that they will strike first and make the threat a reality. The man is confused and doesn't understand what the young man means by the expression strike first. With a smirk, the young man suggests they simply stop selling the antidote. The scene then shifts to the orphanage, where we see several children gathered for a big barbecue. A large piece of meat is being roasted over a bonfire, and everyone seems very excited. The children eat and have fun together, enjoying the special meal that was prepared for them. The protagonist eats a piece of meat with a fork and seems to be really enjoying the flavor. With a look of pure satisfaction, he praises the food and seems to be having fun with the children. He delights in the meat and thinks the flavor is simply delicious and enjoys the moment. He remembers that the meat's flavor is considered the best in the empire and agrees with its fame. The emperor monopolized the meat, making it impossible to obtain even with a lot of money. The young man thinks that choosing the deer's antidote as his next medicine was the right decision. His intention was to prevent civilian casualties, but with the flavor, he knows everyone will become slaves to it. He realizes everyone loved the food and thinks about selling the meat while providing the antidote. The young man imagines that with this, he will also be able to see the Grandmaster's swordsmanship in person. Chief Bake calls to get the protagonist's attention, who seems to be lost in thought. The man thanks him for the precious meat and for providing this moment for the children. He never imagined that the new medicine would be an antidote for the terrifying water deer. The chief then asks if it's okay to simply close the pharmacy and not respond. Eating another piece of meat, the young man asks the man to trust him and just wait. He then wonders aloud who will lose out if they don't sell the antidote anymore. In front of the closed pharmacy, a group of hunters waits anxiously for the shop to open. A man in armor complains that it's been 5 days and the shop still hasn't opened again. The men comment on the rumor that the antidote caused adverse reactions in someone. The armored hunter gets angry and says he took the medicine and is fine and doesn't believe the rumor. Suddenly, he draws his sword and prepares to break down the shop's door with a strike. The warrior charges forward with all his might and prepares to attack the shop with his sword drawn. But the guild leader, Li Jiang-hak, appears and warns that disturbances will not be tolerated. People wonder why the militia captain is there and comment on his connection to YJ. The man announces that sales are prohibited until the formula analysis is complete. The hunter gets angry and says he participated in the tests and is perfectly fine with the medicine. Other hunters join the protest and shout for them to sell the antidote or prove the effects. With a smirk, Master Li just watches the confusion and finds the situation interesting. From a distance, he wonders since when trash like them started talking back to him. He tells everyone to leave and says they are not worthy of making him draw his sword. The armor hunter known as Park Jin-soo looks at the captain and doesn't move. The man in armor crosses his arms and seems to have no intention of leaving. The master gets angry and with his eyes glowing blue, he prepares to attack the hunter. But the warrior is frightened by the threat and apologizes, running away in fear of the captain. The CEO then offers 5 billion won for the formula, but the protagonist refuses the offer on the spot. With a smirk, the young man bites his lip and seems to be enjoying the CEO's proposal. The man gets angry and threatens the young man, saying he won't establish himself in the city if he continues like this. Angered, the CEO calls someone and vows that the stubborn young man will regret the choice he made. He then orders his men to start the work they always do with those who refuse. The man assures that if the master stay quiet, everything will be resolved quickly and without problems. He promises a large reward and guarantees that in a week, everything will be resolved for them. In Lieutenant General Oh Jin-hyung's room, we see his name engraved on a plaque on the desk. In his office, the commander is meeting with the protagonist to discuss an important matter. The young man offers 1 million units of the antidote to the Defense Corps for 50 billion won. The commander of the Jirisan Monster Defense Corps, Oh Jin-hyung, is silent for a moment. With his eyes glowing purple, the man thinks about the value of 50 billion won and is surprised. The protagonist notices the astonishment and wonders if the commander is upset with the standard price. One of the officers notes that the commander is in a very good mood, and the young man doesn't understand why. The commander then asks if there is still a profit even with such a low price for the quantity. Taeju is surprised and speechless at the man's unexpected question during the negotiation. The commander then asks his aide if they can cover the amount with reserve funds. With a smirk, our hero asks to transfer half the amount as an immediate deposit. He reveals that he plans to establish a company and has recently developed a new medicine. With a package in hand, the young man offers a sample of the new product for the commander to try. The young man drinks some of the tea and offers the new medicine to the commander to evaluate the product. The man is confused and wonders what that is, as it seems to be a piece of meat. The commander is surprised to see that the new medicine is actually 2 pieces of meat. He comments that he has been avoiding meat for health reasons and finds the idea of eating it interesting. The young man then suggests he present the meat to the emperor, as he will love the flavor. One of the officers is shocked to hear that this is the deer meat with a heavenly flavor. The young man sits down and calmly drinks his tea while observing the 2 men's reactions. The commander praises the young man and says the army needs young men like him in its ranks. With a serious look, the man asks if he has any intention of enlisting in the army again. Annoyed by the proposal, the protagonist wonders if he should just eliminate the commander. The Jirisan Demonic Beast Defense Legion is located on the outskirts of the Salmon Empire. The Legion's mission is to control the waves of beasts and keep population levels in check. But finally, a great opportunity seems to have arisen for the commander of that legion. He thinks about the water deer antidote and seems to have a plan in mind to use it to his advantage. An officer enters the room and reports that the payment transfer has been successfully completed. The man reveals that the conflict with the association was the reason they negotiated so quickly. The commander then orders his aide to keep an eye on Kim Tae-ju and help him with whatever he needs. With a smile, he thanks the officer for supporting him even when he had lost his connections. The aide becomes emotional and thanks him for finally acknowledging all his suffering. Suddenly, the commander stands up and calls his aide with great excitement in his voice. The officer is startled and doesn't understand his superior's sudden reaction at that moment. With a hug, the man tells him to use this chance to rise to the imperial court. Excited by the idea, the aide shouts all of Kim Tae-jo and leaves the room celebrating the new chance. The scene then shifts to Taeju's house on the outskirts of Guri, a very modern building. We see the inside of the house with a large staircase and an elevator, showing that the place is luxurious. The young man and Chief Bake are sitting in a room discussing the company's next steps. Fortunately, the contract with the military was a success, and the lieutenant general facilitated everything. A newspaper reports on Taeju's new drug and the $1 million contract with the military. With this, the flow changed, and the chief used the advance to pay off the loans immediately. The man comments that it was spiteful to cut ties with the bank and close his accounts there. The young man says he did well and that he can use the remaining money to run the orphanage. With a smile, he reveals that he has thought a lot and cannot run the company alone. He then invites the director to be his partner in the new company, leaving the man surprised. Chief Bake feels insecure as he has only managed a small pharmacy and doesn't think he will be helpful. But Taeju insists and says he only knows how to make medicines and doesn't know how to sell them without help. Moved by the trust, the man laughs and says he will think about it more carefully. He accepts the proposal and suggests a 9-to-1 split in the new company's shares. But the protagonist refuses and offers a 7-to-3 split because he wants him to be involved. The chief accepts with gratitude but says he will not be the one running the company. He reveals that he knows someone more capable, and the young man remembers the man's daughter, Bake Seo, Yan. The man says she is the smartest of his children and that he can call her immediately. With a satisfied smile, the young man thinks that the chief's real power is the children he raised. With a handshake, the two seal the deal, and Taeju realizes he was right to work with him. He then suggests the name Bio for the new company, and the chief agrees excitedly. The man reveals that he called an Awakened One and an Adapter who are former residents of the orphanage. The protagonist is confused by the revelation and asks why he suddenly did that. The chief explains that since Shohun Sik uses physical force, he called the two as guards for the young man. But our hero refuses the help and says he is fine, and that they should protect the orphanage. The man wonders where so much confidence comes from, and if he is relying on something he doesn't know. Taeju has no tattoo, is not an Awakened One, and at most is an adapter and was just a soldier. Suddenly, he hears a noise and turns to see what it is with a curious expression. The young man asks if the chief doubts him again, and the man hastily denies it and changes the subject. Taeju then grabs his coat and says he understands the man's concern for his safety. He asks the chief to call his friend so he can prove his ability to him. With his new coat in hand, he says he wants to prove his ability and test the new antidote. With a smirk, the protagonist gets ready and announces he will go hunting with them. The scene then shifts to the Jurisan demonic beast border zone once again. The young man walks through the forest with a group of people following him closely for the hunt. One of the men is impressed with the coat that cost more than 4 billion won. A young man named Bake Chang-hoon approaches and touches the protagonist's shoulder to speak. He warns that the beasts appear from this point on and that he will take the lead. The protagonist asks him to call him Hyung Nim, and the young man agrees, a bit awkwardly. With a smile, the young man tells him to stay back because his ability to handle the situation is better. Not understanding, the young man apologizes if his words or actions made him uncomfortable. Taeju smiles and says he's used to it and that he's just worried because he's not an Awakened One. He then takes out his dagger and tells them to deal with that thing over there first before talking. The young man turns confused and doesn't understand what the protagonist is talking about. Suddenly, several red eyes appear in the bushes, and a group of creatures emerges from nowhere. Frightened, the young man screams upon recognizing the creatures as storm weasels and panics. A pack of weasels charges forward with all their might and prepares to attack the group with their sharp claws. With his eyes glowing purple, the protagonist prepares to attack the pack of creatures. He then takes several nails from his pocket and prepares them for a quick and precise attack. From inside his coat, he also takes out some spheres with spikes to use in the battle. With a serious and determined look, the young man concentrates for the attack he is about to launch. He then throws all his weapons at once against the advancing pack of weasels. The weapons explode in a large cloud of purple smoke and hit all the creatures at the same time. The young Chang-hoon is completely shocked and speechless as he watches the scene unfold. He knows that weasels are weak individually but terrifying in packs of 20 or more. But now the same creatures he never dreamed of touching have been completely eliminated. The young man watches the sky and sees the creatures' bodies falling after the devastating attack. The protagonist then dusts off his hands after finishing off all the weasels. He complains about encountering a pack of weasels of all possible things in the forest. He didn't even have time to use his Uobido dagger, which needs to be retrieved after each use. With the group safe, he says he couldn't face Mr. Bake if they got hurt on the hunt. To finish them off quickly, he used a barrage of hidden weapons from the Tang clan to defeat them. The problem is that all 200+ weapons are irretrievable, and he wonders about the cost. He regrets not having the 7th star of the Poison Spirit art to retrieve the weapons. The young Chang-hoon approaches and asks if the protagonist is a master by any chance. With a smirk, the young man says he is not an Awakened One and that he will take the lead. The young man tries to argue about his father's orders, but Taeju ignores him and moves on. The group then continues their walk through the forest, following the protagonist to the next hunt. The young man spots a water deer in the distance, and the group hides to observe the creature. The creature seems very calm and eats some grass without noticing the hunter's presence. The young Chang-hoon asks what the plan is to hunt the creature in front of them. Taeju explains that the deer knows it can't touch them because of its own poison. He then tells everyone to take the antidote because they are going to hunt that creature now. The group is surprised and wonders if the antidote really works as promised. The young man holds the vial and wonders if he can trust a medicine that is still in testing. But he remembers that the young man partnered with his father and showed incredible strength before. With this confidence, he decides to take the antidote and prepare for the hunt to come. With the antidote in hand, the young man says it's now their turn to prove their worth in the hunt. He warns that he will attack first and asks the group to cover him with their mana weapons if he flees. With his sword in hand, the young man prepares to face the creature with all his strength. He then charges quickly towards the water deer to attack the creature head-on. The animal lets out a sharp cry of pain, and the deafening sound hits all the group members. The hunters cover their ears tightly to protect themselves from the creature's sonic scream. The young Chang-hoon prepares and uses his Hone Strike, 2 halves, technique to attack the deer. With a single, powerful blow, he cuts the creature in half with his blue energy sword. The animal's body falls to the ground and writhes in pain after the swordsman's fatal attack. One of the women shouts for everyone to be careful, because the creature's body is going to explode. Suddenly, the animal's humps burst and release a large cloud of poisonous spores. The purple cloud spreads throughout the area and envelopes all the members of the hunting party. Taeju observes the scene and admits to himself that the antidote is not bad at all and works well. The young Chang-hoon looks at the antidote and the protagonist with a surprised expression. One of the hunters laughs and tells Chang-hoon that he is completely fine and the antidote worked. Relieved, the young man realizes that the medicine really worked and they are all safe. Our hero approaches and asks if they believe him now that they have seen the antidote's effectiveness. The group apologizes for doubting, and the protagonist says that if everyone is okay, the hunt continues. The young Chang-hoon agrees excitedly, and the group moves on to the next hunt. With a smirk, he warns that as soon as the antidote becomes public, the creature will become extinct. The scene then shifts to the capital of the Salmon Empire, New Seoul, in the former Manchuria region. There we see the headquarters of the Marina Group, a large and imposing skyscraper in the city center. Inside an office full of cubicles, several people work on their computers. A woman calls for Section Chief Baek, who is focused on her work at the computer. This is Baek Seo Yan, the youngest section chief of the Strategic Planning Department. A man named Jeon Johak, the department manager, approaches and asks her a question. He asks if she is from Director Baek's orphanage, and the woman is confused by the question. With a smile, the man says his memory served him well and tells her to drop all her projects. The woman is completely shocked and speechless at her superior's sudden order. He then tells her to go to Guro to take care of something for him, and says it's a favor. The man asks her to go to Gurei and take care of a job for him with a sinister smile. He then shows her the news about the startup Taehong Bio and the contract with the military. The woman wonders what got into him but confirms that she has already read about the new deer antidote. The manager reveals that Baek's pharmacy is a subsidiary of Tong and that the rumor has already spread. He then tells her to go to Gurei, get close to her father, and uncover the antidote's formula. With a furious look, the woman wonders if he is really telling her to betray her own father. Suddenly, her phone rings, and to her surprise, it's her father calling at that very moment. She asks for a moment to answer, and the manager tells her to be brief as he needs an answer. The woman answers the phone, and the man watches her with his arms crossed, waiting for her decision. Impatient, he grumbles and watches the woman talking to her father on the phone in the office. With a smile, she hangs up the call and seems to have made a decision about the proposal. The manager asks if she has decided, and the woman stands up with a determined expression. She then confirms she will go to Gurei, and the man begins to discuss the mission's details. But the woman throws her badge in his face and surprises him with an unexpected attitude. The man screams in pain from the impact, and the woman prepares to say what she really thinks. With a satisfied smile, she announces that she is resigning from that company of trash. She accuses him of being low and always looking down on people, and now he wants her to betray her father. The manager shouts and calls her an orphan, but the woman ignores him and says he is absurd. The scene then shifts to Kim Taeju's building in Gurei at night, with a full moon. In a warehouse, several people are working, packing and organizing boxes with the new products. The protagonist appears and thanks everyone for the good work they did that day. He then tells the others to go to the orphanage to rest, as he will take care of the rest of the work. Chang-hoon worries about the young man's safety, but Taeju asks if he still thinks that way. He tells the young man to protect the children, the CEO, and the young man agrees with the order. With everyone going home, the protagonist thinks the orphanage will probably be safe for now. But he knows there are many crazy people in this world, and that he needs to be prepared for anything. That's why he knows he needs trustworthy people like them to help him with his plans. The young man then heads to the elevator, thinking he needs to develop new medicines to grow. He reflects that he just wanted to earn some decent money and settle down, but things grew. With the company structure in place, he will have room to develop new medicines and get stronger. Taeju thinks that in the end, making a lot of money is not a bad thing after all. Thanks to that, he was able to buy a house like that and start his new life there. He looks around and finds it strange to have his own house after so long without a home. The young man then takes his new coat and puts it on the coat rack to store it carefully. He reflects on his life and how he survived despite being a mana rejecter and nearly gone. But for him, the biggest gain of all was meeting good people on his journey so far. Lying in his bed, he thinks it was a turbulent time in a very short period of his life. With a determined look, he decides that Garai will be his starting point to rise again. Outside, a man named Masangshik, leader of a villain organization, observes the house. With a mocking smile, he comments that a newbie is already buying real estate and acting like a rich guy. One of his men comments on the success of the mosquito antidote and the rumor about the deer one. The chief gets angry, and the subordinate quickly apologizes for speaking out of turn. Ma Sangshik regrets not being able to kidnap the young man and get the formula because of Jo Hoonsik's request. One of the men says goodbye, and the chief says they need to do what they were told and leave. One of the henchmen uses a flashlight and a lockpick to break the house's door lock. The group then stealthily goes up the stairs to avoid making noise and waking up the target. The chief orders them not to waste time and to inject the drug into the young man immediately. One of the men opens the bedroom door and slowly enters to carry out his chief's order. With a syringe in hand, he prepares to inject the drug into the sleeping protagonist. He approaches the bed and prepares for the attack, but something unexpected suddenly happens. The man lunges with the syringe, but his body freezes and he can't move to attack. The henchman tries to pierce the young man with the needle, but an invisible force prevents him from moving. The man's arm trembles and the needle stops inches from the target, who still seems to be sleeping. Suddenly, the protagonist opens his eyes, and the man is startled to realize he was awake. The chief shouts for him to inject him quickly, but the henchman says he can't move his hand. The gang leader is shocked and doesn't understand how the man can't move to attack. Suddenly, the protagonist gets up and reveals that he knew from the beginning they were coming. The henchman turns around scared and doesn't understand where the target went and what happened. With a smirk, the young man says he forgot to mention that he hates injections. The young man appears holding the syringe, and it seems the tables have turned on the villains. The henchman is scared and asks if the protagonist is really a mana rejector as they said. Playing with the syringe, the young man wonders if the effect will be weaker if he just swallows it. The gang chief gets angry and calls him a useless scoundrel for stealing his drug and challenging him. The man is completely shocked and doesn't understand why he would drink that substance. Without hesitation, the protagonist puts a few drops of the drug in his mouth to taste the poison. The syringe falls to the floor, and the young man concentrates to feel the effects of the new poison on his body. With a sinister smile, he comments that the poison has a good effect and asks if they have more. There have always been rumors of a gang in the slums that dealt with drug distribution. The drugs are also poisons, and he has never tasted a new type of properties like that. He knows that with 4 stars in the poison spirit art, he can easily handle the drug. He then absorbs the drug from the henchmen's bodies to advance his poison core to the next level. The men are shocked and ask how he managed to absorb the drugs from their bodies. With a serious look, the young man asks who sent them, and the gang chief refuses to speak. So the protagonist decides to transform him into a new person and uses his power to torture him. Screams of pain echo through the house, and the scene shifts to a road with several cars passing by. In one of the cars, we see Master Li Jiang, Hack sitting in the back seat with a serious expression. The man on the phone recognizes him as the antidote guy, and the militia captain confirms it. A woman in the passenger seat reports that the Sang Sik gang broke into the house and was caught. Master Li gets angry at Jo Hun-suk and says that if he's going to start something, he should at least finish it. He knows Taeju is a newcomer, but the real problem is Baek Hongpao's impeccable reputation. Since he requested a full investigation, the militia will also feel the pressure of the situation. The man then reflects that in the end, this is the only path they can follow. In front of Taeju's house, the group of henchmen is kneeling and surrendered on the ground. One of the men begs for more drugs and seems to be in withdrawal after what happened. Suddenly, Master Li and his companions arrive and Chief Baek greets them. He thanks them for arriving quickly, and the master approaches to see the situation. Master Li looks at the men on the ground, and Chief Baek is confused by his expression. The man on the ground begs for drugs, and Master Li tells everyone to stay away from him. He then approaches and faces Masang Sik, who is writhing in pain on the ground. The gang chief is scared to see the militia captain and stares at him with fear and surprise. Master Li unsheathes his sword and prepares to attack the man who is on the ground. He shouts that by the Emperor's authority, he will execute him right there without a second thought. But before hitting the target, a large, glowing green energy suddenly blocks his attack. At that moment, the protagonist appears and says that's enough to stop the captain. With a cell phone in his hand, the young man asks why he is trying to eliminate the key witness. The gang chief confessed that the YJCO sent him to kidnap and get the protagonist addicted to drugs. With a smirk, he says that from the man's reaction, he already knew about the whole situation. The militia captain then gets angry at the audacity and asks who he is to interfere. He then remembers the antidote and seems to recognize the young man standing in front of him. With a very serious look, Master Li stares at the young man and seems to be analyzing him carefully. Our hero then asks if that was meant to impress him and scoffs at the militia captain. The master then also scoffs and asks if that was supposed to be such a big deal. He just stares at the protagonist with a look of pure contempt and seems very confident. In a flashback, he remembers when he found the young man in the forest as a porter. The young man then falls silent and stares at the militia captain without saying a single word. The master comments that it's a face he has seen before and remembers him as the porter. He then asks if the young man is the same one who made the antidote, and the young man confirms. With a purple aura, the master says that in Gurei, his word is the law and he is in charge. With a sinister smile, he releases a large amount of energy and shows all his power. He then makes one last offer and says to let this end with the 4 henchmen. But the protagonist refuses the offer and prepares to fight against the militia captain. The master challenges him and tells the young man to try to stop him if he is capable of doing so. Annoyed by the response, the protagonist just grumbles and prepares for combat. He then launches several green energy blades at the militia captain without hesitation. With a quick movement, he counterattacks with his own energy blades to defend himself. The 2 energies clash in a large explosion, and neither seems to back down in the fight. The master asks if it was the young man who captured those guys and seems very impressed. He admits that the young man managed to scratch him and that he has at least one good move. With a sinister smile, he says that for obstructing a master twice, the sentence is the end. The protagonist then scoffs and asks if masters are really that impressive. The protagonist then asks what the guild master is relying on to have so much confidence. With that, the 2 advance and clash once more in a high-speed, high-power battle. Our hero then launches several green energy daggers at the militia captain without stopping. But the master defends himself with his sword, which glows with an intense purple lightning energy. Suddenly, a helicopter appears, and the young man shouts for the master to stop the fight immediately. Several people then jump from the helicopter and seem to be reinforcements for one side of the fight. A long-haired man and his men land on the ground in a superhero pose. He then turns to the guild master and tells him to stop, as he has gone too far. From the helicopter, a group of men descends quickly to intervene in the ongoing battle. The new group's leader lands with his men and warns Li Zhang that it's been enough. With the arrival of reinforcements, the fight finally stops, and everyone watches to see what will happen. The newcomer approaches and greets the guild master, saying it's been a long time. The militia captain recognizes him and asks what brings him to a free city like this. With a smirk, the man asks if he needs permission to show up there. Annoyed by the response, the guild master asks if the army is planning to meddle in Gurei's affairs. But the commander denies it and says he is not there as a soldier and his reasons are different. He introduces himself only as Ojin Hyang and faces the captain with a very challenging look. With a wave of his hand, he tells each to mind their own business and turns to leave. The guild master becomes completely furious at the man's audacity and grits his teeth in rage. The commander then approaches Taeju and asks if he was hurt during the confusion. The young man says he is fine, and the 2 shake hands, sealing an unexpected alliance. He then asks who did that to the young man and tells him to just give the name of the person responsible. The commander introduces his men and says he can't let anything happen to the antidote supplier. One of the men offers to assign some officers as a personal escort for the protagonist. Another commander jokes and asks if he should prepare a tonic for the young man to recover. The captain is shocked and wonders if they already knew each other because of the protagonist's father. He realizes he has no choice but to retreat and vows to pay for this humiliation. But before leaving, the commander calls him and tells him to stay and talk a little more with them. The master gets angry and says he is not as carefree as them and leaves in a rage. With a smirk, the commander comments that he is surprised by the captain's reaction. The guild master turns and asks in surprise what the commander is talking about now. He then points to the henchman and taunts the master, telling him to clean up the city's trash. The militia captain refuses the help and says he will deal with the gang when he returns to the city. But the commander interrupts him and tells him to wait because the gang members are going with him. Annoyed by the order, the master asks why the army is getting involved in the matter. The man explains that they tried to kidnap a good friend and he cannot ignore that. He warns that this is a violation of the laws and that the emperor would not like to hear about it. With a red lightning aura, he asks if the master thinks he can look down on him. The militia captain is completely shocked and speechless at the commander's threat. He then threatens the master and asks what the punishment would be if he eliminated him right there. Not knowing what to do, the captain just clenches his fist and glares at the commander in anger. The commander's men then taunt the master and challenge him to a fight right there. The militia captain remains silent and seems to be thinking of a way to get out of there. The women of the group also stare at him and seem to be waiting for an answer from the man. Sweating coldly, the guild master remains silent and seems to have made a decision. He then turns and tells everyone to get in the car because they are going back to the city. With a smirk, the commander comments that the master was very loved in Gurei. Our hero then thanks Lieutenant General O for the help he provided at that moment. The man laughs at the situation and says it was nothing because they are in the same boat now. Chief Bake approaches and thanks the commander for arriving so quickly to help. The man then asks if the chief is okay, and he says he was saved by a hair's breadth. The protagonist admits that if he hadn't called the commander, things would have ended badly. Fortunately, they managed to catch the bandits, and now they are surrendered on the house floor. The commander then puts his hand on the young man's shoulder and seems to be comforting him a little. He offers to take care of the bandits, but the protagonist says this is a personal matter. But the man insists and says the army corps' safety is at stake with the antidote. With a serious look, the young man says they need to resolve this without crossing paths with the master again. He remembers that his blade's poison did not affect the militia captain during the fight. The young man wonders if he would have won the fight if the commander hadn't shown up to help. With a determined look, he decides he needs to get much stronger to face the masters. The young man watches the commander take the criminals away so that this never happens again. In the car, the guild master writhes in pain and curses everyone who got in his way that day. He then notices a scratch on his hand and remembers it was the young man who hurt him earlier. Suddenly, the wound starts to glow with a green energy, and he wonders if it's poison. The guild master lets out a groan of pain and realizes the poison is spreading through his body. He then grabs his wrist tightly and tries to stop the poison from spreading further. The poison travels up his neck and face, and he wonders what is happening. One of his subordinates sees him in the mirror and asks if he is okay with the situation. Desperate, the guild master shouts for her to take him to a hospital immediately. The car then speeds through the city streets at high velocity to take the man to the hospital. With the poison spreading, the master screams and wonders what was that Tae-ju did. In the helicopter, the commander and his men fly over the mountains with the criminals. Inside the aircraft, the gang chief is tied up and seems to be very scared. He then offers to tell everything he knows to the commander and his men there. But the commander refuses the offer and says he doesn't need to because they already know everything. He then calls one of his men by name and seems to have a plan in mind for the bandits. The man stands up and prepares to carry out his superior's orders without hesitation. He then orders the criminals to get out of the helicopter one by one, and the men plead. One by one, the henchmen are thrown from the helicopter in mid-flight and scream in despair. With the cleanup done, the man informs his commander that the job is complete. The commander then orders him to take good care of Jo-hun Seok, and the man agrees. He then orders two of his men to assign troops to the new company, Taehong Bio. With a smirk, the commander decides he will use this chance to ally with Tae-ju. At a train station, a woman with short hair walks through the crowd with a bag. Suddenly, her cell phone rings, and she sees it's a call from Baek Chang-hoon at that moment. She then answers the call and says she is already at the terminal and has just disembarked. The woman is shocked to hear the news and asks if the young man really did all that. Chang-hoon reveals that he has already created the antidotes and has invested billions in their orphanage. With a smile, she gets into a taxi and says she will see him at home and hangs up the call. She then asks the driver to take her to Baek's orphanage, and he agrees to the request. In the taxi, the woman understands there was a reason her father suddenly called her there. She then arrives at her destination, which is the entrance to Baek's orphanage, the place where she grew up. In the yard, several children play excitedly while a barbecue is happening. Chief Baek turns with a smile and says she has finally arrived for the party. With a big smile, the woman says that if her father calls, of course she would come running. The man then thanks her for coming and comforts her with a loving fatherly hug. She asks what is happening, and her father reveals they are eating a poisonous deer. The young woman is completely shocked and speechless at her father's unexpected revelation. She realizes that what Chang-hoon said was true, and the man confirms it with a smile. Chief Baek then calls her to meet the young man, and the two walk through the orphanage yard. The protagonist serves some soup to the children and tells them to eat slowly. The chief then approaches and introduces his daughter, Baek Seo-yin, to our hero. With a friendly smile, the young man greets her and says it's a pleasure to finally meet her. She then remembers having met him before when he was delivering a package. With an awkward smile, the woman asks him to take good care of her from now on. She then promises that she will help the new company, Taehong Bio, grow the right way. The protagonist then notices something and turns to see what is happening nearby. A group of soldiers arrives and a major introduces himself to the young man with a formal salute. Our hero thanks everyone for coming but is concerned about the large number of men. The major says it's no problem and that they brought camping equipment with them. The two then shake hands and the protagonist says he hopes to work well with the major. The soldier guarantees he will risk his life to protect the young man and makes him very excited. With the invitation, the major shouts for his men to get ready to eat and join the party. Observing the scene, the protagonist thinks that he is finally no longer alone in this world. The scene then shifts to Garai Castle, a luxurious and well-protected place in the city. In the committee's meeting room, the YJ CEO is being interrogated about his crimes in the city. One of the men asks if he acknowledges all the accusations made against him. With a look of defeat, the CEO admits that he acknowledges all the accusations made there. Angered, he thinks that those scoundrels took his money and now betrayed him.